So hi, I'm Lera, CEO and founder of Lera AI. We specialize in using AI for analyzing and producing video content. But actually, I've only recently transitioned from a cybersecurity role. I actually spent almost a decade in cybersecurity, coming up to it, doing some form of security analysis all the way through to leading on the Harvey AI security reviews, audits, all that kind of fun stuff. Yeah, started off in web development and kind of went on to get a bit more technical. Um, Spoke to a lot of people about SQL injection, cross-site scripting, that kind of thing, and got my first job in fintech, focusing on PCI DSS. So lots of legacy code, lots of talking to developers trying to figure out super old systems. And yeah, eventually we got to the point where we started using a lot more data analysis for figuring out what exactly is happening in all of these super old systems. And I got pretty good with Splunk and started creating predictive models. And soon after, I actually joined PwC as an AI security architect, where I did my OCP. So I did a bit of red teaming, kind of went hand in hand with the products that the AI team was creating at the time. Yeah, and more recently, I joined ANO for their work with Harvey and kind of just focusing on all of the AI implementations. So not just Harvey, but also their work with Microsoft, any other odd bits of AI that came about, which was actually quite a bit over the last few years, as you can imagine. Um, so yeah, and then I recently, as of 3 months ago, left to start my own company and focus a bit more on actually creating those AI models. Again, trying to understand the content of a video. So create a model that would take every frame, extract the text, objects, and try and give you the context behind what it's bringing up. So yeah, and then we've recently started actually working on a model that will predict trends in a given video. So say that we've got information about recently trending videos, what people are searching for. You can basically say, actually, these topics that your video is about, these are getting searched for a lot. So this is a great thing to do. So we're working on the predictive model behind it, still in testing mode. Yeah. Oh, and I also recently published an article on evaluating attacks against machine learning models, but under production controls. So typically it's very academic, and all of it's like talking about testing your attack on like a local machine, which is all fair, all well and good, but actually in production, most likely you'd have like increased latency, you'd have firewalls, things like that would actually affect it without you even like doing much to implement those controls. Just typical.
Very
So
cool,
yeah.
very cool. Yeah, it's interesting because we don't see that very often. Like clearly, like a pretty drastic change in trajectory, but at the same time, there is a thread that keeps going through, right? You also, so you mentioned that you've been around the AI threats, AI plus security, kind of for a while or a while back. Now, in terms of AI, like it feels like it's kind of like forever. But I'm very curious to hear, because you were doing that like a while back, how things changed over your career in
Mm.
how you observe these types of attacks, and where you think we're kind of getting at today.
Yeah, I think this has been brought up a couple of times now. It's the fact that we've always had AI, and I think in being in security, especially security operations, we're like, of course we've been using machine learning since like day one. How else are we meant to evaluate all of the alerts without any kind of help? So that's where I started off. And in terms of the actual threats, I think when I was at PwC and at the fintech, it was very much about the data flows. We looked at what kind of data our vendors, typical supply chain issues. We weren't so much concerned about what, for instance, if we were using something like Splunk, we weren't so concerned about what is Splunk training on the data we're providing it, because now that would be such a huge issue for us, because obviously if you even start using Splunk, it's going to be gigabytes, terabytes of data that you're sending to a potentially model that continues training on super sensitive data. That was not a massive issue because at the time we had all of the other controls in place, and we were like actually going by PCI DSS, going by all of the ISO, all of the existing SATs. This is a completely acceptable, this is a normal workflow, and we don't expect even a condition in the contract to be, we will not train on your data. Whereas, at least the most recent work I've been doing, it's at every single level. It is at the contract level, we are putting together wording that will like encompass as much or as little of AI as possible to make sure we're protected. Again, with one of the things I want to draw a distinction of between is the difference between using AI by like a startup, so someone like me, where they're really happy to share all of the architecture, all of the data flows. They'll even like share a live view of their environment to get your business. Whereas try talking to Microsoft or Salesforce, that just won't happen. So there's really a different approach you need to take with both. But at the very lowest level, we'd be interested in everything down to the network level. So you get, I can't remember which product it was now, but one of the more recent network security tools we've been onboarding, they were able to actually filter out the types of AI traffic. So by tag. So you'd select a tag, and actually it was very good at detecting AI, but it was not very good at putting the differentiator between AI and actually this is just an application with some AI, so everything would break. So yeah, we've got like all of those different layers that we need to investigate now.
Right. Yeah, I mean that. I think the distinction that you're mentioning probably will not exist for very long. Anyway, between what's AI and what's an application with AI.
Yeah,
I feel
I
like.
think
Yeah.
that's
Sorry, we're just gonna mute somebody here. Okay.
Oh, I thought that was like an interesting comment. Okay, cool. The distinction between, sorry, can you please repeat the last?
No, I was just saying the distinction between AI traffic and an app with AI traffic, I feel like it's a disappearing distinction, right? Like towards the future for sure. You mentioned, I just want to make sure I understand that correctly. You mentioned that in the early days you didn't the question of where your data was going to be trained was not an issue, but I feel like this is a very, maybe not PwC, I don't want to pick on it, but like a very compliance level statement, right? Because it was the compliance that wasn't an issue, but it was still kind of theoretically an issue, right?
Theoretically, yeah. I mean, I think it was just this difference in focus from, we know where, from like data security to AI security. So it was not that we didn't know where the data was going. We did the normal data flows. PCI DSS requires you to not just track the data in and out of the PCI DSS or the credit card servers. It's also the service connected to the credit card servers. So it's like a really large network of servers endpoints that you're actually tracking. So yeah, I think it's just a difference in perspective. It's been a really huge change, and I guess on the other side of the fence now, when I was first looking into building models, it was taking so long just to be able to, for instance, I talked about like the text detection model. Previously, when I was first playing around with it as like a hobby, it took a really long time for me to be able to do that, like literally months and months to just get it to detect text in a sustainable way and actually explain the context. And these days, like there's just like so much happening. I could take like a few days and come up with exactly the same thing that it would take a few months to do before. So yeah, things are definitely changing, and I think just because we've never really looked at AI in over like network versus application versus compliance versus contract versus all of these different things that you look for these days, just to make sure that you're accounting for this additional feature.
It's kind of
Um,
amazing and terrifying how fast the industry can go improving when you have billions of dollars behind it and many top minds.
yeah.
Not only the acceleration, but the rate of change to acceleration is itself going faster. That like we talk about models that launched 3 months ago, and like, well, but in AI time, that's like 16 years ago, so it's barely relevant.
Genuinely, I think I noticed it as well with. So I published when I was doing research for my paper, which was like 6 months ago. All of the papers I was referencing were from the 90s, early 2000s, really, really super old things that basically set the entire academic base for this is how you attack a machine learning model. These days, I heard about one actually doing research for this, where 92% of a vector embedding was reconstructed back into plain text, um, just from someone overseeing some vectors passing through a network.
I feel
And
like
that was
every
like,
side channel attack, it's amazing the fidelity you can get back. Like, oh, we heard the sound of you typing, and we can reconstruct not from the individual sounds of keystrokes plus like a little bit of guessing what's the most likely combinations, and like, oh yeah, all of the background audio as you cover the screen, but we can hear your keyboard going. We know what the password is now. Terrifying.
It's
yeah.
like a lot of the attacks that historically were like the spherical cow in a vacuum kind of attacks are just absolutely possible, at this point. It's crazy, but I think it's also interesting that it feels like we are also reopening a lot of threat vectors to the human, like the human weakness, right? When we're talking about prompt injection,
Yeah, that's
I know I was watching the what is it, OpenAI agent like announcement a couple of days back, and they were talking about, be careful because a bad person could convince your agent to go and do something, and it's a weird full circle, right?
I mean, you know what? Actually, have you heard about Bing Chat and the failure of Bing Chat when it was first released? It might have been in the news. It was definitely all over my newsfeed. But when Bing Chat first released, this was about 1 to 2 years ago. Um, it was a disaster to the point where Reddit forums were completely filled with prompt injection attacks against Bing Chat, and they got it to reveal its secret code name. I can't remember what it was now. It got it to various prompt injections, got Bing Chat to say things like "I'm gonna run away with you, and we're gonna get married in the sunset." So you just get yeah, you get these absolutely crazy screenshots of this LLM just being like let loose. And then they revoked it like they revoked all the access a week later.
In similar to seeing the same types of attacks in other places, confusing data with instructions a la prompt injection is also SQL injection and cross-site scripting. Like it happens everywhere. And when the same channel is coming for new data versus new instructions, the large language model picks the next most likely token based on the previous tokens. It doesn't matter if some of them were intended as instructions and some were data, they can both be misrecognized as each other.
Yeah. Um, there's one interesting distinction that I try and like I don't know if it's comforting or what, but there's the distinction between a model that's like always training on user data, and then a model that's like the base model, which is like 99% is like OpenAI and Gemini, and then maybe you'll add some fine-tuning data. But interestingly, you only need like a few hundred rows of fine-tuning data, at least from what I saw in Gemini, during my own coding stuff. So yeah, fine tuning. There you go. It does kind of like make it a little bit less
But fine
exposed.
tuning, it feels like it's just like the security training that we tell employees to do every year, right? I feel like it's the version of that.
You know what? It's really
Out of
funny. Everyone,
curiosity, I think I have a harsher take on fine training than most, and I'd love your impression on it. With new models being released all the time, and the capabilities of those new models coming up, and with how good few shot prompting tends to be, I'm pretty negative against most use cases for fine tuning as opposed to just like we have million plus or 200,000 plus tokens to work with. Give your five best examples of input and output in the prompt itself, and essentially never fine tune.
yes,
Or at the very
absolutely.
least, the majority of use cases for fine tuning are worse than just few shot prompting.
Yeah, absolutely. The only exception to that, and one of the things I wanted to talk about is again going back to the other side of things, where now I'm the one going through security audits. I wanted to do a bit on how what is it that companies actually are looking for in terms of what data would they even want from you. So one of them was actually like specific niches and like I don't know if you've heard about this, but there's specific models that focus on recognizing doctors' notes for prescriptions. So there's like pharmaceutical AI, where it's like we can automate pharmacies now. So they might actually have like two or three industries. So the ones I came up with were legal. They definitely want fine tuning for that. Healthcare for various use cases, and also to some extent finance. Just again from the fintech side of things, we had a lot of the same sorts of documents coming up. So that kind of automation. So yeah, if you work in any of those, then I guess just be super certain that this tiny little startup is not ingesting your data and using it for training or fine tuning in that case.
For fine tuning, I might be wrong. I'm curious. I love being wrong, but like it feels like one of the arguments for fine tuning is an economic argument, right? I'll give a very specific example here. So, like at Lima Charlie, we have this system where you can go like the typical Copilot, like I want to create a rule that detects WannaCry, and we spit back out that rule. And the way we can do that is we know that the major models are not that well trained on the structure of the rules in Lima Charlie. So what we do is we quite literally dump a large part of our documentation into prompt, and we use Gemini with 1 million token context size, and it's magical and it's great. But I know that we're also kind of like burning money through that prompt every single time. So I would expect that the biggest argument to fine tuning these days is actually to say, you know what, I need to I think about it like compiling it, right? Like Python versus a compiled language. I need to compile it. So now that part's fast and I don't keep paying for it as much as it is.
Yeah, like people have argued that large language models are essentially compression. You have like all of the training data into a much smaller model. You could think of maybe fine tuning as one more round of compression to get 90% of the effectiveness of a large model with a much smaller and much cheaper model. I think it's kind of like going back to your Python analogy. Instead of leaving behind Python and going to C, C++, or Rust or whatever, you should probably try to see if you can make the Python work a little better. You should probably see if you can do some. I'm doing some stuff now with just caching in Claude because input tokens are 1/10 of the cost if they're cached. Like there's probably some low-hanging fruit for scaling the easy frontier model before you worry about fine tuning. I'm curious as to Lera's take on that. Oh, and I didn't catch pronunciation. Sorry.
No, Lera's fine. Either is good. Yeah, no, I completely agree with the Claude. Honestly, at one point I ended up playing around with video. I don't know if either of you have done that yet. But I ended up generating a couple of hundred videos without even noticing somehow. And I think I was down about 100 pounds. And I was just like, this is a bigger cloud build than I was expecting. For an absolute, yeah. In terms of efficiency, I'd say most of the time the models that I'm using, if you're doing any kind of document analysis, especially at the level that I'm doing, I don't find it to be too burdensome at the moment.
Yeah,
It's not like yeah. Every now and again you get like a video with a hell of a lot of text, but that's not odd.
right, right. So I'm curious, going back a little bit, I think in time in your specific case, but so you've seen the adoption of a bunch of different technologies in enterprise, like around AI. Um, do you have a take or recommendations maybe for people that might be here that are kind of looking at different things around there be dragons, meaning hey, we've seen so many different issues with that type of approach or that type of technology versus another one, or just something like that?
You know what? Actually, I did have like a generic warning that I wanted to give. One of them is across several different conversations with different vendors over the past like several years, but increasingly so recently, where we have delved into how are you processing our data? How are you changing the data? When it's changed, what do you do with it? Anyway, all of these like really fun, not just like where's the data going, but like what are you doing with it at every single point? One of the things that keeps coming up with those vendors is that the data traveling through your network is not the plain text data. It is just vector embeddings. And these are just like word embeddings of your actual prompt. It doesn't matter. If somebody manages to, I don't know, man in the middle, they'll only get these text representations. And there's now a few articles written on, again, I mentioned this before, but it's the fact that actually just from these word embeddings, it's possible to reverse it back into plain text. So there's an article, I think I sent through like a few different resources, but they're all on this, well, I think all of them are on the same thing. It's the fact that, again, 92% of this experiment word embeddings that were compromised, you could reconstruct 92% of the original plain text. So if vendors are saying that to you, it doesn't mean, oh, it's no longer sensitive data. It just means treat it in the same way.
It feels like an analog of the remote desktop arguments that we've heard over time, right? Where, hey, I can't be hacked. People can't read my data because I don't actually have access to the thing. It's a remote desktop session that goes over. Whereas technically, the reality is that the data really is there, and it is possible to reconstruct it, over time. Now, I would hope that this vector data is encrypted over the network, and I often kind of have that statement of you have to trust the transport at a certain level, because if we can't trust the transport, we have so many more problems than just the reconstruction of vectors like that. That's my take.
Rephrasing and agreeing. If your threat model includes TLS being broken, you're boned and should give up on computer security. So don't put TLS in your threat model. Just like if Microsoft is in your threat model and oh no, they're going to attack us, then you should probably not be using Windows and Office on your desktops if Microsoft is in your threat model. We got to keep things realistic.
Does that match reality with what you've seen in enterprise? Did you see more concrete types of attacks? And there, I think we have this thing in security, which is great and terrible at the same time, where we theorize about all kinds of crazy attacks. I mean, to a certain extent, if you'd asked me 10 years ago, right, the keyboard sound attack, I would have gone like, yeah, that's a spherical counter vacuum type of attack, right? But is there more, like, have you seen more concrete, real things happening?
Do you mean in terms of actual compromise or just the types of attacks that are open?
actual compromise or compromise adjacent, right? Like I think of a year or two ago, I think it was Air Canada, somebody, you know, is different. It wasn't an attack. It was bad information. So it's a bad example. But you know, we know you know, what we see all the time over Twitter, like people kind of like going and, you know, convincing a bot to reveal that they're a bot, things like that. So that type of practical.
Well, yeah, I think the one thing I am always cautious of is the fact that, and again, I don't know if this is going too far, but in terms of things that generally I look for to make sure that a SaaS vendor, where again you don't have access to their data flows, you don't have access to their architecture, in terms of like training. I think the biggest issue comes from the fact that actually when somebody introduces an AI model into an existing product, you don't know that the scope of the data or what is actually going into the model. So one, it's the fact that it's beyond the actual prompt, but on the other hand, they've got all of your existing emails and the existing application data. And again, if it's part of the same product, chances are you're going to have to look at both of those really, because again, it's not like completely in isolation. So I think that it's an easy one to get thrown off by, and again, it kind of leads to people kind of just forgetting that AI is like part of the new app. But
If I may make an older reference, since we're now connecting all of the things like via MCP and such, desktop Claude or Claude Code or whatever, being connected to your email, your calendar, your SharePoint, etc. That means that an injection attack from any one of those sources could get data from any other one of those sources to some extent, at least theoretically. And I don't think that's getting too far into spherical cow either. It's very possible. So making the older reference, if we have this stream and this stream of code and instructions, or you have your the prompt itself and your email, don't cross the streams.
Yeah, I feel like those two things put together probably covers 80% of the things to worry about AI and cybersecurity, meaning there's the compliant, maybe it doesn't sell it right, but the compliance side, meaning, hey, where's your data actually going? And you, who do you know you're sending it to and what they're going to make use for? It's not sexy, but it's reality. And then the other one is just prompting. Prompting is prompting.
Fourth party risk is a thing. Like your third parties taking your data to another third party of theirs, or sixth party. I don't know, 3 squared. How is it called? Ninth party.
That's right. That's right.
I think there was also one thing we were looking at most recently, and I think I briefly touched on it when I spoke about Copilot. It was the fact that actually Microsoft's gone so big into Copilot that it literally is crossing all of these different applications and the data going into Copilot. Especially like it's hard to draw the distinction between like just Copilot from Microsoft and like all of the various products that they've now just started adding AI to. But one of the things that I discovered recently was they actually have a browser extension that will be able to tell if on the enterprise network if you've been to AI specific websites and if you've put in certain information. So yeah, talking about just like different LLMs and AI applications you have on your desktop bouncing off each other. Actually, that's very, very new Microsoft ability, but again, specific.
Yeah, I like that. I mean, that's good because I mean, I think perhaps in typical Microsoft fashion, they're both the biggest creator and solver of issues there. You know, when I'm thinking about Microsoft embedding AI through the operating system, then we're really truly just like, you know, look, we talked to somebody there a little while back, and like it sounds like they're thinking about it the right way, but it's breaking down a lot of barriers, and not in the right way, not in a good way. Cool. Well, this was great. Thanks a lot for coming, having a chat. Was super interesting. If folks want to get in touch with you, is there a better way to do that?
Yeah, sure. So pretty responsive on email. You can send one. My website's leo.watch, like a watch video. So you can get in contact with me there, or just Lera@email.watch. Or I'm pretty good on LinkedIn, trying to get more into it now.
Awesome. Cool. Thanks for coming in. And we will see everybody next Friday for Defender Fridays. Have a good weekend.